So, Dionne Gipson. Normally, when I talk to people, it's people that I don't know well, whose work I've admired for years. I get to say I get to talk to a friend when I get to talk to you, which
Yeah.
is a total delight. And I'm glad we get to talk together because you're in a show that's going to be opening at the Wallace in Beverly Hills called Invincible.
Yes.
And before we get started talking about Invincible, I want to ask you about Shakespeare's play, Romeo and Juliet, which serves as the inspiration for this.
Yes.
Why do you think this play about star-crossed lovers has inspired so many other artists to create their own variations of it and for audiences to just eat up this tragic story?
I think it's Romeo and Juliet is the classic story of everybody's ideal of what love is to them. I think most of the world comes from backgrounds like they do, where there's some opposing, you know, obstacles that prevent them from being with each other, and they have to do everything they can to fight to be together, which is a lot of stories of most teenagers. Parents usually don't like the other person, or or interracial, or some cultural differences, or there's always something that you know makes it hard for a lot of teenagers who really love each other, like, to come together. And I think this hits a lot of people, and their experiences of how love happened for them. So I don't know, it's such a classic and beautiful story. And I think a lot of people use this story because you can insert so many things into it. You can put a Black person with a white person, Indian with an Asian person, a short with the tall. It's like opposites that aren't supposed to be together get to come together. And I think in America we have so much diversity in so many people, that people, they try to sector each other off into these, categories, instead of saying, let's all, be together. And I think Romeo and Juliet allows every diversity of whatever it is: gay, straight, Black, Hispanic, whatever the differences may be, that they can come together despite the differences. And America's all about differences. And Romeo and Juliet kind of defies those differences and allows you to defy the differences.
But what's also interesting about Romeo and Juliet is it's part of a long series of dramatic love stories where the couple does not ultimately end up together.
Yeah.
You can look at Gone with the Wind or Casablanca or
Yeah.
Titanic.
Yeah.
Out of Africa, The Way We Were. There's a lot of stories where the couple doesn't end up together.
Mhm.
Why do you think the dramatic love stories that mean so much to us are the ones where the couple does not ultimately end up together?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think maybe people have missed out on their love. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's the experience of people who, never get that love story. That's a really good question. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, it's some people have said, well, even though they're apart, they end up together, which I think that's a little wonky. I just think that for me, it's like the great love stories, are stories you don't ever get over.
Yeah.
That even if they're apart, that relationship is not something you ever fully get over. They're still going to be that one person.
Yeah, that's true. When people say there's that the one that got away, there's always that one that never worked out, and you're always pondering on what could have been with that.
Right.
Maybe, and that makes people look at, watching Romeo and Juliet and seeing that they didn't make it, makes them go, gosh, if they only had made it, what could it have been? It would have been the most beautiful thing. And now we have to just wonder about it for the rest of our lives.
Or if only the Montagues and the Capulets actually found a way to respect each other.
Exactly.
Now, it's my understanding that in Invincible, there
Mhm.
is no Mr. Montague and there is no Mr. Capulet. There is only Mrs. Montague and Mrs. Capulet.
Yes.
So tell me about the role you're playing, Madame Montague,
Okay.
and what she takes on, particularly, the way this show is structured.
Okay. So Madame Montague, uh, her husband, this is post-war, and she represents a sign of I would say Martin Luther King sort of piece, where she's trying to teach her son about how to fight and stay in the fight for equality by using the philosophy of nonviolence. And um, her husband is passed in the war, so the people are looking to her unofficially as a leader. And same for on the Capulet side. She's not really in charge. There's somebody else in charge, but since her husband was the one that was in charge for the most part, everybody kind of looks to her as well. And these are two women who are running each sector of Verona with unofficial leadership, that people are looking to them for the answers. And so they have their way of doing things. And I think Madame Montague is the peaceful way. And their Capulets are about a dictatorship, and the Montagues are about democracy and having equal rights. So my goal in this story is to teach my son what it is to fight for what's right in the world and your place in the world without being violent.
And somehow in this post-apocalyptic, post-war version of Romeo and Juliet, you all get to sing the songs of Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
Oh my God, yes.
So how do their songs fit into this? Because when I think of Pat Benatar's songs, I'm not really thinking there's a Romeo and Juliet angle here. So you have the inside knowledge. How does this music work in telling this story?
It's amazing how they did it. Bradley Bredeweg is the book writer on this, and I think he's been working on this 12 years, I believe. And the way that and Pat and Neil came in the process. I'm not exactly sure the dates that they came in, but once they collaborated together, um, they made this beautiful, wonderful piece. And I was wondering how that could, how could they do that? But for instance, Jesse Vargas, who did all the music for the show, rearranged so many of the songs. You still know what the songs are because you know they're Pat Benatar and they still have the melodies, but the way he arranged them to underscore the love, the falling in love, is just simply amazing. Like they sing a song, We Live for Love, which is one of her songs. It's a little bit faster when she recorded it, but Jesse slows it down, and it's a moment when they're falling in love with each other and realize that, you know, this is what we live for. This is, people try to keep us apart, and wow, look at what we've just found, something so beautiful. And we both, this is what our lives should be about, not fighting, about this. And so that's a song. I sing a song called Let's Stay Together, and it's a song to convince. I've heard it's a rock and roll, let's stay together, but this one is more percussive, and I'm singing because I'm trying to reason with my children, well, with Romeo, about not getting out there and trying to fight the physical fight with any of these Capulets, because they got more weapons than us, and it's not about that. They'll take us all out. We don't need any more war. It's about be peaceful, do your protest, stand up for yourself, but and don't listen to all that craziness with all your friends out there. Stay right here. Remember the love. Let's stay together. Let's keep our eye on the prize and on the goal of being peaceful and having a peaceful protest. So that song I sing, people walking around all lost and confused. That's about all these people out here with these weird ideologies and trying to be dictatorship. Don't listen to all that. Listen to what we taught you in this house. It's all about love, peace. And we're going to stay together and reach that goal together.
And just so no one gets confused, we're not talking Al Green's Let's Stay Together.
No, that's right. Stay together. That's hers. She rocks it out in her original recording. Yeah.
Right. Now, as someone who has seen you in multiple shows, I always love it when you get a big kick-ass ballad to sing. And
I don't have one. I don't have one in this show.
So Purgatory isn't rearranged so that it could be a big moment for you?
Okay, well, I do get to sing on Purgatory, not by myself, but I'm singing with the wonderful Sharon Leal from Dreamgirls and John Patrick, he's a big time theater, a thespian. He's been in all kinds of shows. And we do a trio. He plays the friar and Sharon Leal plays Mama Capulet. And I play Mama Montague. And we do a trio kind of at the church, or actually it's we're all kind of in our minds, but her child has ran off. Juliet has ran off because she wants to do things her way. And be with her Romeo. And my Romeo has, as you know, everybody's looking for him because they believe he killed someone. So we're both in our emotional states and, almost a prayer to the universe, to God, about keep our children safe. And so I get to sing the chorus. So that's really fun. Oh, sweet Redeemer, will you save a place for me? It's not a ballad. It's a little bit faster, but I really love singing that too. Yeah, so I get to sing the chorus.
Well,
so no big ballads for me this time.
Well, maybe the Wallace will be so enamored with your work in this that they'll add you to the Sorting Room series of cabaret shows, and then you can do a whole show there.
Yes, we've talked about that a number of times, so maybe it will be happening. Lots of things like craziness I know when we last talked about it, then the pandemic hit, and then it was bananas. So I'm looking forward to getting into that Sorting Room at some point.
I would love to see that. So what role, if any, did Pat Benatar's music play in your life?
Oh my God. So when I got, the very first time I got to be involved in this show was probably 5 years ago when they did their very first workshop. And it was amazing. I couldn't even believe, first of all, she's very involved in the show, which is amazing. She's there every day, all day, her and Neil. If it's not her, it's Neil, or both, or it's one of them are there every day, and they are hands-on in the process, and that's amazing. And even from the start, with the first workshop, she sits down and talks to us individually, just casually telling us, why she wrote this song, what it means, where she was in her life. And I just want to pinch myself that it's Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo that are, I'm getting to talk to them and have dialogue about their songs and their life and what's going on. And when I was 13, I'm telling my age, but I remember going to one of her concerts, And there were two girls in my neighborhood that turned me on to Pat Benatar. I remember we went, I think that back in the day, they used to have those world premieres of the videos. And I believe they were having one for Love is a Battlefield. And they're like, you gotta see, I was like, oh my God. So they're the only people who had cable down the street. So gathered at her house, and here comes the video for Love is a Battlefield and Pat Benatar. And she was so like, whoa, we had never seen anything like that, you know. And being from Peoria, Illinois, we're mostly, our radio is mostly rock and country music. So we had one rock radio station, one country music station, and well, no, two country music stations. And to see somebody like Pat come on TV, and feeling the angst that we felt as kids, and being strong and powerful, and being tough, you didn't get to see that in female artists at the time. So she was kind of coming in to change the whole landscape of how we thought about who we are as women. It was dainty and kind of sticking towards being dainty and super girly. But she came in and we could wear wristbands, spike our hair up, wear the dark, eye makeup, the little skirts and the, muscle shirts. It was she was very liberating. So, and, she became an influence in my life, Joan Jett, Prince. And then, of course, with my mom and dad's soul collection, I had a ton of that. But, the rock side really pushed me further than anything, because I ended up getting a deal with Arista Records in my 20s with an all-Black female rock band, and I was the lead singer of that band. And just being inspired, knowing that I could do that by someone like Pat Benatar and Prince and Lenny Kravitz and all those Steven Tyler. I forgot about him. He's one of my faves too. So my girl from Fleetwood Mac. She was another one of my,
Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks. I used to listen to her a lot too.
Right.
And so it was, Pat's definitely was an influence in my life. And when I first got this show, it was great because this is the first time this show is ever going up. It's actually happening, not a workshop. And we are, and what was I gonna say? Oh, sorry, my my little thing is going off over there. But the first thing I wrote on Instagram was to my friends Tracy and Stephanie Conwell. And I was going to dedicate my very first show to them, because how we used to rock out to Pat Benatar was like learning the whole video, all the moves and everything, buying all the wrist bands, and trying to get the right eye makeup, trying to get everything to look like her and be like her. It's like surreal that we're working together again. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, I know another artist that influenced you was Tupac. And the reason I know that is because you posted on your Instagram on July 23rd,
Yes.
a wall from Untitled.
Yeah.
And I looked at that today, and there was part of the lyrics that says, men and women together as equals, war was gone because all was peaceful, which sounds like it's exactly the point of Romeo and Juliet, and by extension, of course, Invincible.
Yes.
How do you think this show will resonate in a country that you've already discussed as having been polarized, where people have to put those they don't agree with, in a separate area as like not to be bothered, not to be spoken to, not to be listened to?
Yeah. I think this show, first of all, the cast is so diverse. I love the storyline and the diversity of the cast. Romeo is African-American boy. Juliet is a Filipino girl. Mama Capulet, Sharon Lill is part Filipino and part Black. I'm a Black, African American woman. Benvolio is non-binary. Mercutio is gay. And
I always thought Mercutio was gay anyway.
okay. Yeah, and the girl who plays Nura, she's I think part Japanese, part white. She has a lot of mixes in her. And what other unique? Oh, and all the ensembles, just an array of. I love how they are really harping in on allowing everyone to be who they are. We have men in the ensemble wearing female, clothes, and just being the costume designers like really expressive. And I'm not sure who was behind I'm sure Bradley, in his thought to create this story was to be inclusive, because this is what Bradley Breadaway does. Every story that he's ever done has always been about inclusivity and bringing everybody in. So the whole style of the show is so diverse, with everybody wearing everything, girls wearing guy clothes, guys wearing girls clothes, guys being whoever they want, girls being whoever they want. Our hair is, it's a diverse in color in the ensemble. You've got braids, you got long hair, curly hair, short. The whole show is super diverse. Even our director is an African American woman, and she's directing the show. And it's just like, wow. Jesse Vargas, of course, is doing the music. So many diverse, so many diversities just in the cast and crew alone. And then the story is very diverse. Yeah, it kind of.
Well, now it just takes people listening and paying attention.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think with all of that, you'll find that when people watch things and they see themselves in and then they see themselves with something that's different, they tend to go, that's possible. That's a possible thing. And it makes people go, put down their guards a lot of times in their prejudices when they see, wow, that's me with that person, and that's beautiful. Wow, I can see that. Now I want to get to know, if a African American boy is in the audience and he sees that, he's like, maybe I'll get to know some Filipino girls. Man, that was a beautiful love story. I see myself in Romeo, and now, may man, what a beautiful girl. You know what I'm saying? And vice versa. A Filipino girl or kid looking like, that's me, and wow, she's with a beautiful Black boy. I can do that. So it always takes something that to hit home, and that you connect with yourself, and you see that some differences can happen for you to lay down your prejudices. It's almost like, when someone has a biracial grandchild for the first time, they like, oh man, I didn't like Black people for a minute, but wow, I have a beautiful grandchild. Oh, let me take another look. And you know what? Why do I have these prejudices? And let me put that down, because my grandbaby is just the same, and I love her to death. And that's what it takes for people to connect personally, see themselves in another way, lovingly.
Right. Now, of course, you and I became acquainted through the For the Record series.
Yes.
So anybody who was in Los Angeles who saw For the Record Tarantino or Baz Luhrmann, Scorsese, or the rest,
Yes.
knows you from those shows. I'm wondering how much those shows have informed who you are today as an actor, as a singer, and how those skills, you're able to apply them to something like Invincible.
Oh my God. I can't say enough for the record. I mean, first of all, that's my family. I always call them uh, my heartbeat because they resurrected. I was resurrected doing that series. I had been in LA doing mostly television, film, and hadn't been in the theater a lot. I would sing here and there at different things. But once I got into For the Record, and I got in at the most amazing time because I came in the beginning when they first started. So I've been through so many versions of their growth. And I I learned how to sing. The first time how I even got into For the Record is Shane heard about me through Matt Patton, and and he's like, "Well, can she come tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I thought I was doing I thought I was doing background singing. I show up with my background, stand and all dressed in black. He goes, "Oh no, we're featuring you. You're going to be featured." And I was like, "Oh." So I had to learn the track that day. So number one, For the Record, you better know how to do everything very fast because they put shows up. At that time, they were putting shows up in like 2 weeks. As they, progress, they get, a better contract. And, now as some of their shows are doing equity shows now. But before, we were just putting those shows up. Well, we got to put it up in 2 weeks. We got to figure it out. And, you know, and we were just singing wherever we could.
Well, and remember the earliest shows were when it was bar at
bar.
Vermont, it was just that little shoebox space. And
Exactly.
in and around an audience where it was like it got so popular that there were more people than there should have been in that space. And I don't know how any of you ever maneuvered your way around it.
And how none of us ever got sick.
That's true.
Crazy. We would dance and sing on people's laps. You learned how to maneuver around the obstacles. And I think that was the biggest lesson in For the Record is learning how to pivot. Okay, that's not working. Pivot this way. Okay, so we can't get through there. So now we got to pivot that way. Oh, so this is it's too, that's going to be singing too loud because the person's right there. So let's pivot and sing a little lower here. Oh, our mic's not working. Oh, we'll just sing out loud. There were so many things thrown at you For the Record as we were building in those building times that you just learn how to go with the flow of so many things. That's taught me a lot. This show we're workshopping and building the show at the same time. So there's a lot of changes happening. So it's easy to go and okay, this is what we're doing today. All right, got to pivot there, got to pivot here, got to pivot there. So and For the Record, I would say has been my king size bed. I feel so comfortable on stage being with that show. They would put me in things. Chris Bratton was the original musical director, and he would have me singing like soprano, second, like I don't know what the highest soprano is, first soprano, I think it is. And I was like, I don't sing that. He's like, yes, you do. You're gonna sing it now. So I grew as a singer in the series because I didn't even know I had that range like that I can hold notes. And now I'm soprano and everything I do. I used to be alto, like low alto. And I'm like, no, I can't. And now my range has increased. I'm not afraid. I feel like I can be thrown anything and I can deal with it. I'm like, I can do any part because For the Record, I got to play a man. I got to play Sam Jackson. I got to play Madame Capulet, an old drunk lady. I got to play an Asian woman in Tarantino when I forgot the role.
In Kill Bill.
In Kill Bill, yep. I've gotten to play so many diverse roles because that's how For the Record started was I could play a man, I could play a woman, I could play a girl, old person, light, dark, black, white. It didn't matter.
I'm just sorry I never got to see you play Dirk Diggler.
Oh man, the only one I didn't get to play.
That was, for the record, Paul Thomas Anderson, for anybody who wonders.
Right.
So let me ask you, Dionne, I mean, we're approaching 2023. You know, it's a very different world post-COVID, for better or for worse, in a lot of different ways. How much does, for you as an actor singer in this business, does it require for you to be invincible now?
Wow. Um, you definitely have to be invincible now. Um, Especially the game of acting now has changed so much. No one's going in the office hardly anymore. Those were the days where casting directors kind of picked out, maybe 20 to 30 people that they thought, and then you go in for an audition, you knew that it was going to be up against pretty much the people you saw in the hallway. And if you had a callback, pretty much between those people in the hallway. Now, post COVID, now that we have Zoom and you can send in your tapes, like those casting directors are getting hundreds and hundreds of tapes now. So even that, you have to turn in your tape fast so that you'll be seen, which and then having to do tapes without a casting director. To guide you, you have to kind of just, you used to be able to guess, and then you go in a room and take your guess, in your biggest guess in the room, and then they like, good, but try it this way, we need you to turn it this way or turn it that way. You don't even have that, and you have to send in your tape blind with your biggest guess and hope that you guessed close enough to them to want to call you back for something. And it's so you're up against the competition in acting now is so bananas. It sometimes you do feel like giving up some days. You just like, I don't even get the calls like I used to get before COVID. You kind of get in a cycle of or a rotation at some of these casting offices. They see you and they're like, oh yeah, and they remember you. But now it's like everybody's seeing everyone, and it's kind of the wild west of auditioning now. Doesn't really feel like a pilot season anymore, really. Everything's all over the place. Shows used to be like July to April. Now you have shows starting in November, shows starting in January, shows mid-season replacements. It's anything goes now. So you really have to, if you really want to do this industry, you have to constantly stay on top of what's going on, who's casting what, try to keep yourself relevant in their faces, however you can, with emails or whatever you can do, because you just don't even, you don't know how you're going to even get called in. Like every time I get called in for an audition, I thank God, and I'm like so lucky because there's so many people going out for roles now. There's so many shows. It's just like you would think, oh, the role should be open up for me, but no, it's like so many shows now, so many, which means so many people auditioning for so many, for those shows, and you really do have to stay invincible and strong and steadfast and keep your eye on the prize and not give up. And it's really hard, especially when you're older, and when you're 20, you're like, I got my life, and I'll do this until something breaks. But the older you get, the more that you want to, like, I want to land something. I've been working, I've got good credits, I got a good resume, I want to work. So it's hard not to be anxious about waiting. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, then let me finish our time talking about this show, and I hope that we get a chance to do this in person.
Yeah.
Over a glass of wine, because I remember those days.
Yes. After the show, we all used to sit out there.
Absolutely.
I will miss those days.
I do too, but they'll be back.
Yeah.
So in her memoir, Pat Benatar said the following: "I've enjoyed every age I've been, and each has had its own individual merit. Every laugh line, every scar is a badge I wear to show I've been present. the inner rings of my personal tree trunk that I display proudly for all to see. Nowadays, I don't want a perfect face and body. I want to wear the life I've lived. Now, without going into any specifics about your or my age for that matter, as you get older, do you feel the same way Pat Benatar does, that you want to wear the life you've lived?
Sometimes. And then sometimes, no, I don't. Sometimes I want my boobs just a little lifted, okay? Sometimes, the little things, you want to just, you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, what about that? Yeah, sometimes you feel powerful when you can achieve something as yourself. Like getting cast in this role as a mom of a son, it's a powerful role. And I get to instill something to my boy. And I went into the room for this audition as myself, no makeup, just my hair and my voice and what I brought in. And when you're validated by getting a role as you are, then you love who you are. When you make those accomplishments as you are, then you love it. But sometimes if you hear, oh, she looks a little too young for this role, or she, a little too tall for this role, or a little too, when you don't get something or you don't achieve something because of something about yourself, then you start looking and questioning those things about yourself. You're like, am I really good enough? Was my voice too big? Is it too, is it too small? Is the tone of my voice, did they, not like that? You start questioning that. So I always have to go back and look at what I've accomplished in my life as Dionne. I've never got any plastic surgery or anything like that. And I think about everything that I've done and I go, oh, I was hired because something in me they love. So you appreciate that. And I totally agree with Pat on that. And when you see her, first of all, she looks so beautiful. She's so happy. But her and her relationship with Neil, it's so magical that it's almost, you see what the key is, why she looks so good, why both of them look so good, is because the happiness that they have with each other, I think really keeps you happy inside. You have somebody who wants you, who loves all those things of you. It's easy to say those things. It's easy to say, I embrace all of it when you have, like I said, that accomplishment that surrounds that, or if you have someone who loves you and loves everything about you, you don't give a rat's ass about what anybody else thinks. And you don't feel like you need to do any of that. And I think she's looking at what she's accomplished and kind of comparing it to myself. I would say the lesson I would get from that is being who you are and accomplishing things, being that, being the authentic person that you are, will help you as you grow older to appreciate everything that you have. But if you don't accomplish and you have some bad things, it's going to make you question.
You still got to embrace who you are, though.
But you still got to embrace, yeah.
And no pun intended, but for the record, nobody is going to say your voice is too small.
That's true.
When you said that line, I was going to go, who on earth said that about Dionne?
I know, this big old voice out of this little body. Everybody always says that. I thank God for it, though. I appreciate it. And I thank God for these gifts all the time. Every day I wake up, I just feel lucky. And that people still consider me for things that I just feel grateful to be a part of this, and grateful for anything that, people still go, you know, when they said, you requested for an interview. And I was like, I am, but his name is Craig Byrd. And I was like, I love him. And I know, and I know that you love me. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate, it's nice to know that I'm still loved, and that, I have love out there.
You
The
do, and
more
I can't wait to see the show. I think I'm going to be going the first weekend in December.